Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you for joining. Uh, and yeah, it's our first Better Futures Australia's first multi-sectoral roundtable of the year. I want to start by acknowledging that each of us are joining from First Nations country today. I pay my respects to the elders on the lands I'm privileged to live and work on, the Yagara and Turrbal peoples in Meanjin, Brisbane, and yeah, feeling very lucky every day that I spend in this beautiful place for the work that's been many generations to make it a resilient and regenerative place, and a constant reminder that it is fragile, and our constant efforts to keep it in a somewhat stable setting. Hey, Stephen, good to see you. So as we all very much getting into the year that is 2025, you're all very much in the thick of it, entering what will be a very decisive moment for climate ambition and climate action, not just in Australia but globally. So we've got a federal election that could be called any day. I've heard rumours it might be announced the weekend before Climate Action Week kicks off on the 10th of March, for the 17th of April, I think is the date, or it could be the May deadline. But yeah, a lot of great work already underway to try and make sure that all Australians are engaged and alongside us in the journey to a zero emissions and climate resilient future. So yeah, big shout out to all of you for all the stellar efforts underway, and yeah, the resilience you're all displaying in these times of uncertainty. So we also are very conscious that Australia and the rest of the parties to the conference are expected to deliver their updated NDCs, or their national climate plans, their 2035 emission reduction targets. So Simon Steele gave a bit of a soft, friendly extension for all parties to submit that by September. But the anticipation there is that countries will submit them sometime before COP30 in Belém this November. So that's a great pressure point for us to work around and continue engaging Climate Change Authority and other allies to make sure that the Australian delegates and our climate and energy minister deliver our fair share in that 2035 commitment. Hey, Catherine. Hey, Belinda. And thanks for joining us. So beyond that too, there's also the bid from Pacific and Australia to co-host COP31 next year. So that really brings to the foreground the importance of strengthening our relationship with our Pacific neighbours and also our allies in Brazil, so that we can do what we can to align the COP30 and COP31 priority agenda items, and yeah, see where we can find some other opportunities. And yeah, all of you I know are thinking about the post-election scenarios, and where that might land us all in the different sector focused or yeah, areas of the climate challenge you're each working on. So yeah, there's lots of avenues that different organizations are sharing where they might pivot their efforts if the political environment might shift slightly or a lot. So lots of hope out there that no matter which way it goes, there's things that can keep us going. So I yeah, myself and Jordan and Kira also on the call were lucky enough to sit in a room with our Kenner colleagues from other teams across different regions to do a bit of a brainstorm around what the first month after the election might look like in different scenarios with what we're hearing in the Australian uh, political debate currently. So yeah, lots of ways it could go and lots of opportunities, and it's just a matter of us all being as coordinated and aligned as we can be to make the most of where we land. So very glad you can all join us today to share updates. So I can see representatives from the Transport Working Group, the Nature-Based Solutions and Land Use Group, the Health Group, the Local Gov Group, the Corporate Finance Group, and Belinda's here from Comms Declare, who's doing some work on a fossil fuel-free COP, among other things. And yeah, lots of great work underway. So let's kick off. Without further ado, I will hand over to Imogen from the Local Gov Working Group to just share any insights, any priorities for the local gov sector in terms of mitigation, adaptation, resilience, and where there might be opportunities for people across other sectors to collaborate and help. Thanks, Imogen.
Hi there, everyone. It's great to see you all. There's a few things going on in local government land at the moment. So ALGA has just put out their pre-election sort of budget ask or advocacy asks, and a whole lot of other regional alliances of councils are looking like they're working on using providing sort of similar election asks in the process. I feel like there's better coordination across those asks than there has been before, which is great because I think there's sort of evolving consistent messaging coming across. And the local government review that we produced last year has helped to support. Thanks, Scott, has helped to support. So ALGA, for example, the Local Government Association referenced the local government review in their advocacy asks in terms of asking, I think, for $400 million in adaptation resources for local councils on an annual basis. There's quite a lot of work going on in adaptation pathways as well, and so interested to see what other groups will be looking at in terms of adaptation and how to collaborate with local government in that area, because I think it is becoming a more emerging area of focus for the sector. There's some work around multi-level governance that Scott's been leading in terms of pilot programs for household energy upgrades and the built environment and how they could be replicated across other sectors as well. Most of that work's on hold until post-election to see where that lands. But there's also some work around that ICLEI's doing to lead around better governance across the sector to help inform both state and federal government decision-making that aligns with local government needs and priorities and skills sets. So that's the sort of a big piece of work in terms of actually getting local governments better represented at the table at both state and federal decision-making points. I think if there is a climate positive number of people elected, there will be opportunity to start championing a nationally funded local government program. So I think probably post-election, a bit of review around that, but also some discussion around either way the election goes, that local governments are really still the heartbeat of providing support to communities in the face of disasters and also providing really effective mitigation opportunities. So a bit of thinking around how to message that no matter which way the election lands. The Clean Energy Upgrade Finance round one has been released, and there was about $100 million allocated, or maybe $50 million allocated to councils to do energy efficiency upgrades at pools and libraries and the like. And the round two for that is just opened, so councils are getting on the board with that. The Climate Emergency Group have been doing training for elected members across councils and senior executive in terms of how to govern in a climate emergency, which has been oversubscribed, which is great. Ironbark is kicking off a virtual power plant program in Western Sydney, which is a collaboration across 8 different councils, and a really interesting model. So the tender for that has just closed, I think. So we're now getting into the evaluation of that process and looking to allocate partners for it. But I think a really good opportunity, both in terms of investment, engagement with community, seeing positive solutions roll out across quite a really populated and diverse area. So it's an interesting case study that we'd be interested in replicating elsewhere. ICLEI is also running a town hall COP at the Climate Action Week in Sydney, looking at nationally determined contributions and again how to get the local or like sub-level government sectors represented in nationally determined contributions. So that's not currently the way the government helps it. So we're hoping to get them to activate that more. And the local government review last year indicated that local governments current targets would add up to about 30% of Australia's nationally determined contribution if they're extrapolated nationally. I think that's it. We also just ran a webinar for councils around Scope 3 reporting, which is sort of big news across the business community, particularly because they are now required to do the Scope 3 reporting, and councils are caught up in the both upstream and downstream reporting chains. So skilling everyone up on that level of work is also really important and an interesting development. So, Scott.
Yeah, just one thing to add. I don't want to make it too much of a local government show, but I attended the RAFA gathering last week in Sydney, where there was a lot of strategizing around the election. Some interesting insights, particularly in my patch. So I've got 3 of the marginal seats here in Eastern Melbourne, Chisholm, Deakin and Menzies. So we're going to, over the next couple of months, hopefully wheel out our councillors to go and meet with MPs around some of those key election asks in the RAFA package and the ALGA adaptation ask and some of our specific asks as well. So that's on the go at the moment.
Thanks, Scott. And was there, and someone else on the call might know, but was there any intel or updates on the timeline for the adaptation discussion paper?
I went to the working group breakout thing on that, and they said that they weren't going to release it till after the election, and it's probably just because it's so big and complicated, and they just want to stay on message around the cost of living stuff and work that angle, and then revisit the resilience and adaptation package later.
Right. Thank you. Anyone have any questions for Imogen or Scott? Thanks, guys. Lots of exciting stuff happening, and yeah, hopefully we'll see some of you at the town hall at Climate Action Week. It's going to be a great opportunity to focus in on local level action and all of those great advocacy initiatives Imogen and Scott just stepped us through. So next up, who should I throw to? Anyone keen to chime in next? Otherwise, I'll pick on, okay, Caitlin, help. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be as thorough as my colleagues before, but let's give it a whirl. So health working group, we had a meeting earlier on this month, and I think the focus, unsurprisingly at the moment, is on the election. So there's a number of events being run by Doctors for the Environment, a few events being run at Climate Action Week from Kaha. And I think some of the strategy around campaigning for the election is sort of coming to the fore at the moment. A little bit there from Kaha, DEA, obviously Better Futures Australia with the pre-budget submission. So there's some key pieces coming out there. And I think most of the conversation that we've had is surrounding sort of a lead up to us having a bit of a like a working group, a longer working group meeting where we sort of work out what our common Venn diagram middle intersecting points are for our policy interests. And there was a little bit of talk about having that at the beginning of the year, but just given the capacity of the working group at the moment, and also the political climate, it probably makes a little bit more sense for that to be in the latter part of the year. So we made a bit of a decision around that. Welcomed me to the new to the health working group as in my capacity as the climate change officer for ANMF, Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation Federal Branch, which is very exciting. And I think that's sort of the crux of it. I don't know, Lisa or Jordan, if you wanted to chime in with anything else that I might have missed there.
That's a great summary, Caitlin. And yes, we're very excited that ANMF now has a climate change officer. That's very exciting. And one thing probably to note is the Healthy Futures team has been working on some great case studies for hospitals that have a plan to decarbonise their operations. So the health sector, I think, represents around 10% of Australia's greenhouse gas footprint, or 6 to 10% or something. So it's a significant portion, and yeah, the hospitals themselves are a large chunk of that. So yeah, there's some exciting developments that were being spoken about that might be in a position to share some case studies in the lead up to May. So that could be a bit of a solutions focused opportunity to just show the potential of reducing cost of living and costs to the health sector as well through electrification and energy upgrades more broadly. So yeah, lots of great things happening. And then I think the central shared aligned area is still around work of the health sector to get health in all policies, and of course the climate pieces of the health and climate strategy across all government and all policies. So really that healthy futures and intergenerational lens, which is a really helpful lens for all the advocacy work that many of us are doing. So yeah, there's definitely a post-election session there to see what that looks like under the updated context. Jordan, anything to add there? No? Alrighty. Yeah, thanks, Caitlin. Anyone like to chime in next?
Sure.
Thanks, Sam. Corporate finance, excellent.
Yeah, so the corporate finance working group had a great session sort of at the beginning of the year to set some of our priorities for the year. I mean, I think one of the interesting things to come out of that discussion, and I think a little bit different to the two groups that just reported, is we didn't have such a big collective focus on the election. And I think probably in part because some of the work that the group is focused on and the government policies and legislation that they're looking at either already in train, or they might be kind of hidden away until the election sort of happens. And so whilst there was a recognition that some of the things we're working on may change dramatically if, depending on the outcome of the election, between now and then, there's a lot more work just sort of looking at existing things that the government is doing. So the big ones are disclosure laws that started on the 1st of January. Nothing sort of immediate there, but it's definitely a watch and wait space to look at how organisations and corporates are engaging with those laws, what the lead up to the first sort of reporting deadline is going to be, how much agitation there's going to be from the business community. We've already had members of the coalition say that they'll wind back those laws if they get in. And so that's very much watching space. The Climate Active program that was due to have its future direction put out publicly late last year, we've seen nothing happen in that, but there has been quite a bit of media recently about the large number of corporations who've been pulling out of the Climate Active program because they don't believe that what it sets as benchmarks for good climate action in Australia are good benchmarks anymore, and the way it talks about offsets and other things like that. So businesses are stepping away, but there has been nothing yet from the government or whether that program is going to be revamped, shelved, or put in the bin. We're also doing quite a bit of work around transition planning. So again, this was something that the government had flagged via Treasury and the Sustainable Finance Plan, that we would see something come out for public consultation either December or January on what transition planning would look like. nothing has come out yet, and this has been one of the areas, particularly following the US election, that there's been a little bit of backtracking, businesses stepping away from this idea of mandatory transition planning, mandatory climate action plans, and those sort of things for businesses in the US and Europe. Whether that's had any impact, we're not sure. The areas of the department working on those that bit of work have gone a little bit quiet. But what we're really keen to do, if and when that consultation comes out, is try and coordinate and align with other organisations around getting up a lot of submissions on why the transition planning is important and the types of things that can come out of really clear transition planning across all sectors. So those are the kind of, I guess, like government spaces that we're watching. The greenwashing inquiry also has moved back their reporting date, and hopefully that will still come out before the election is announced. I mean, it could come out after, but obviously it'll just be a little bit harder media-wise to get anything out of that. But it has increased its focus on sort of corporate greenwashing around sort of net zero commitments, which I think is a really great expansion from sort of the initial terms of reference, where they're looking a little bit more at like labelling and consumer-facing products, but looking now at like the greenwashing on a broader sort of corporate scale. So it's great to see where that inquiry has gone, but hopefully we'll see something on that before the election is announced, or quite soon. Other priorities for the group is there's quite a lot of work happening around what a fossil fuel-free COP31 might look like, the engagement that would need to happen with international groups now via COP30, and then also in the lead up to COP31, what a plan and a list of demands might look like. And I'm not sure, I sort of missed the intro, Lisa, you might have mentioned that Belinda's actually going to talk about that separately, but there's been some conversation in the group around how we participate to that roadmap and set of demands, and how also it feeds back into the much bigger collaboration pieces that are happening around COP31. And then there's the roadmap to a clean COP31 event that's happening at Climate Action Week that a couple of people from the working group will be at or participating in. And then I think the final thing we talked about for a bit of a focus on the year is how we think about like positive climate action from corporate spaces and from business leaders. We did actually see a bit of an uptick in that over the past, say, 12 to 18 months, with businesses looking at how they were going to engage in positive lobbying, whether it be around phasing out fossil fuels, whether it be around science-aligned targets, whether it be about improving NDC and those sorts of things. And again, there's been a real kind of noticeable step back from businesses from November last year. And so just looking at like what does that engagement look like over the coming year, and likely there'll be no answers to that until after the election, when businesses get a sense of how it's going to play out for them. So we have a little bit of work to do there, I think, in terms of how we think about business engagement going forward. And that is us, I think.
Yeah, awesome, Sam. I'll just add, Andrew on our last call updated that the Business Council for Sustainable Development Australia has some kind of semi-formal agreement with government to coordinate the business sector on the 2030 sector breakthroughs. So I'm not sure what that looks like, but if anybody has interest there and wants to engage in COP, there might be a bit of a discussion to have with BCSD, Australia, New Zealand stakeholders there. And the other piece to mention is that our friends at the Investor Group on Climate Change are progressing their Climate Action Pays Off campaign, and they'll be hosting an online event as part of Climate Action Week Sydney to amplify some of the champion voices, a couple of which BFA has connected in to share how climate action is a good thing and will pay off, and that the whole investor community is definitely on board with recognising that. So that's another good one to promote and share with your networks. So lots of positive things happening. Any questions for any of the points Sam raised? Jill?
Well, it was going to be a question. Now I think it's a comment. Just in relation to the IGCC thing, because One of the things I have been noticing is that companies have been winding back their climate ambition because they can't, with their current thinking, they haven't made the shift to, like, it needs to be a whole shift. That's one, and the other because they're so worried about not having the data to be able to report against. And there's some really big companies have been doing it. I think I heard even like BHP's just totally ditched their transition plan to have more fossil fuels instead. It's just like, so yeah. Thanks for letting us know about that investor group thing that we can share.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. Sam, any reactions to Jill's point?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really valid. We did a bit of a top level scoping exercise to try and find, there's obviously just so many stories coming out of what companies are doing in Australia and overseas, and definitely those companies which are already in that space, they're doing coal, oil, or gas, but they're also been doing renewables. There was 5 or 6 that immediately scrapped the renewables stuff, and they saw the changing global context as a way to just easily do that with no sort of pushback, I guess. But I think on the other side of that, there has been a whole lot of corporations who kind of doubled down to say that actually we want to do more in the green space or renewable space, making sure things are science aligned. So I guess the chips are sort of falling where you'd expect them to. But I think the investor stuff is really interesting. There's been some big announcements by, the international IGCC group and a couple of other big global investment groups where the companies are kind of signing up to say, yes, we want to keep investing in climate positive action. I mean, I think the biggest risk that still exists in that space is are those companies actually willing to do something more independently? Because I think what we kind of see in Australia is those companies saying, yeah, great, we'll share these campaigns, or maybe we'll sign up to a campaign, but then evidence of them going up and lobbying something completely different in Parliament. And so will we see an increase in that misalignment in their individual lobbying, which has reduced? Maybe that's what's going to increase again. I think there'll be more we kind of think there might be a bit more of that sort of stuff, or just stepping away from some of those public commitments that are a little bit harder for the companies to swallow, but they felt like it was the right thing to do, and maybe they feel like now they don't have to.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping our friends over at Influence Map will be able to kind of, I'm sure they're doing some sort of first 100 days, first 6 months of the Trump administration and what that means as to, how high the panic needs to be.
Yeah, hopefully. Yes. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Jill. Should we throw to transport next? Jill, Stephen, any updates?
Stephen, do you want to lead up? Because I wasn't at the last meeting.
I'm not sure that I was. I don't know where the group's at, to be honest. I mean, there's some good initiatives for the election that we'll be signing up to better streets Oh, good, thank you. We'll be signing up the one that the open letter that Jill's just put in. We'll be doing a bike sector campaign infrastructure, so it's not directly, I mean, climate benefits, of course, for active travel, but can't honestly say that that's going to be the primary focus. It'll be children, but yeah. So that's all I've got for you, I'm afraid.
Excellent.
And I've also just added in a little bit from Living Streets Canberra. I'm trying to do the walking equivalent to Stephen and having a a walking election platform. Queensland Walks has also been doing some really useful stuff at the state level, and I think some of that might be useful for us nationally. And one of their campaigns, interestingly, two interesting things. Three. One is that they're being currently funded by the Department of Transport and Main Roads to build the Queensland Walking Alliance, and that's been going great guns. Second is one of their campaigns is around safety for women and kids, particularly around lighting, because that's a huge barrier. A different barrier to women riding bikes, but it's all around safety and feeling safe for both modes. And the third is, and they've got landscape architects on board as well, is actually greening the streets to cool down the whole space, as well as making it a lot more comfortable for people to be out walking. And that, of course, is a climate adaptation thing as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, guys. And Caitlin, I don't know if you've seen anything recently from the University of Melbourne Idle Off campaign, if that's still running too. That might be some comms pieces to keep pushing. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I am familiar, sorry.
Okay. I can chase that and send everyone an update via Hanno at Uni Melb. They've been running an Idle Off campaign around schools and promoting active travel and other options. With a good health angle there.
Yeah, great.
Jordan, was there anything else from the Transport Working Group? Were you there?
Yeah. So the Transport Working Group has undertaken a bit of a review of the strategic direction and who we have in the group, where the energy is, who else we might want to bring in, and there's particular interest around freight, getting some representation from that area, and so really it's just having a look at that at the moment. We contributed to the pre-budget submission that went in, and a couple of organisations put their own submissions in. There are a couple of other ones that are open or were open for consultation that we were feeding into, some changes to the fuel efficiency standards and the like. But we're just monitoring those things and information exchanging at our events, at our meetings about events and various activities.
Thanks, Jordan. Jill?
Yeah, I forgot something else that came up. It was in the Better Streets chat. So 18 months ago, I think it was, Standards Australia put out draft new off-street parking standards, which was designed to make it easier for the increasingly large vehicles to park. And there was, I think, over 600 submissions, almost all of which were against it for various reasons. And we have received the replies which they basically rejected all of those submissions, saying that they're just designing them for the size of the vehicles that are on the road. And that is disappointing on so many levels. One is because there were so many submissions and they usually get hardly any, and to make any submission to Standards Australia is huge, because you've got to sign up and go through about 10 gateways and not share anything and whatever. And it was just like big slap in the face. So that's a big thing to try and reform. It's just whatever. But on the positive side, people are now starting to call out that maybe Australia should, the only pushback tariff that Australia should do is against the big American utes. So that's something creative.
We'll look forward to some coordinated efforts around there. Thanks, Jill. And I've just put in the chat to Stephen and Jill. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but some of the state government bodies are definitely engaging in the Renewable Fuels Week event next week with biofuels being right up there. So that might be a good segue to bring in our friends Doug, Tracy, and Stuart with nature-based solutions and land use updates. So yeah, who would like to kick us off?
Anyone else?
Yeah, sorry to throw you in the deep end, Stu, right after you join. Yeah, thanks for joining us.
I work in the environment movement. There is no shallow end, Lisa.
Right. Good point.
I'm not sure I have much. The only good news we have is in lieu of nature positive reforms federally before the federal election, there looks to be some support. It's not landed yet, of a government pre-election commitment around 30 by 30, i.e. money, maybe 200 million-ish. No one really knows. I don't think it's settled that we know of, to buy land to create more public and private and Indigenous protected areas. So we asked for 5 billion. So 200 million is not heaps, but it is. It shows that they realise it's politically important, and so that will be useful. I think that's probably all I can say. There's other stuff I'm not sure how relevant it will be for this group. But,
yeah. Thanks, Stu. And is WWF planning a reaction we could amplify, or?
Yes. We'll wait to see if it's affirmed or other commitments. There's been other discussions with other environment groups about federal government pre-election commitments. That will be the one that's most relevant to climate action and land carbon. And we've been, obviously engaging with a lot of federal candidates and MPs and parties around a report card across a whole range of nature and climate matters. I think the other point I'd say is the New South Wales Natural Resources Commission is holding producing a report into reforms to landscape management, particularly around native vegetation management, also private land conservation, due by March next year, with a government response by September 2026. That's a really important reform, and it sits alongside their review into a strategy for nature, legislative instrument that could have goals and targets around nature in New South Wales, and a lot of that would be around forests and land carbon matters and threatened species that are germane to this. So that's if you're in New South Wales and want to engage in that, that would be very interesting. And it's run by the NRC as opposed to the environment or the local land service departments. There's an advisory panel, Martine Moron and James Strategise on that, and Ollie Costello.
Thanks, Stu. And that report card you mentioned, Climate and Nature report card, is that election related, or is that post-election?
It will be WWF's engagement with federal MPs, parties, independents around 5 broad recommendations on policies and funding around the environment. So I'm happy to share those with you if you want to share them around, Lisa. Around funding for nature, marine protection, reform of national nature laws. There'll be some around First Nations and maybe some around plastics, regenerative economy, circularity. And there'll be a lot of dot points under those.
Excellent.
And of course, renewables.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that would be great. That reminds me too, Climate and Health Alliance. Michelle did say that Climate and Health Alliance is also putting together a scorecard for the election. So
ours is a report card, not a scorecard. So it'll be a bit more narrative and discursive rather than a, green or red or orange turtle or something. So it's different, and it'll be longer and more, I guess, allow parties and candidates to put forward what they're proposing if they get elected.
Great. Yeah, that sounds super helpful. Thank you. Doug, anything to add from the next economy?
Not specifically from the next economy. I just think the other thing, which probably most people are aware of, is the nature capital account that ABS are putting out the first national ecosystem account. I think that was due out in the coming month or two, but the other day I also heard it might be later in the year, but there's something coming out. That was all from.
Yeah, thank you. And Tracy, how's your internet holding up? Likely not there. But that's maybe a good opportunity that Catherine, would you be happy to introduce yourself? New ClimateWorks colleague joining us. Welcome.
Great to meet you. I have just moved back from Cambridge in the UK, where I was working for the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, which engages with CAN Europe, so some connections there. I was working primarily on corporate advocacy and UK and EU focused policies, so it's really nice to be back in Australia. I was living in Canberra previously and now based in Melbourne working on Australian policy and industrial decarbonisation. So if anyone has any kind of connections or things I should read to get my head back into Australian policy, I'd be really keen to receive them. Thanks.
It's a dangerous invite there, Catherine. So prepare yourself. Welcome back. We're glad to have you back on board. And then a few other updates. So I'll just chime in for the last update from ClimateWorks, given that Tracy's having internet troubles. So ClimateWorks is collaborating with some others on the land use trade-offs model 2.0. And I think there'll be some updates mid-year on the data around nature and land use from that. There's lots of work underway across the working group with NRM Regions Australia and University of Melbourne Biodiversity Institute and others on the NRM nature repair market, nature-led resilience pieces. There's some significant funding coming in from Minderoo and others on nature resilience and nature-based solutions for adaptation and resilience, safeguarding communities from fire, flood, climate risk. So lots of exciting pieces there in the research and non-government space, university space happening. So hopefully we can get some updates on those next. But Jen and others were an apology today. What else did I mention? Yeah, and then ongoing interest and work in the nature renewables tensions for social license and the jurisdictional obstacles too. There was someone looking into that. I can't remember who, but just when they're trying to put large-scale renewable projects overlapping where they're trying to also do land carbon and regeneration and resilience nature projects. So yeah, some obstacles there that overlap nicely with the work that the local gov working group is doing in multi-level governance for rolling out our climate solutions more effectively. So yeah, it's always reassuring to know so many great orgs and minds out there trying to tackle all these challenges. Yeah, Doug.
Sorry, Lisa, I should have, I can't find the raise hand button on Zoom, but I should have mentioned before that the next economy had we've had a fairly busy week last week with a few launches. And one was the Mount Isa economic roadmap, which we got a fair bit of media around related to the mine closure and the what Mount Isa can do in terms of decarbonising and having a more of a well-being economy going forward. So that came out last week and can share some stuff on that. The other thing is there's some events around Amanda, our CEO, with others, wrote a book, Regional Energy Transitions in Australia, and there's a series of book launches around how regional economies can transition that may be of interest to people in this group as well. Yeah.
Awesome. And how was that Mount Isa roadmap received?
Most of it's been fairly positive. Yeah, it went wider in terms of media than what was anticipated. So it was picked up by, I don't know, it was mentioned yesterday, it's escaped me now, but yeah, it went wider and most of it's been fairly positive. No one's done a stitch-up job, which is good. There has been some local negative media on it in Mount Isa, but most of what I've seen has been fairly positive that there is an opportunity to decarbonize and to the options of gravity, kind of gravity energy and yeah, other things that look positive for the region. So it's good.
Yeah, excellent. Well done, Tierney. Thank you. Belinda, if you're there, I wonder if you'd like to just chime in on the fossil fuel free and fossil ad ban work that's underway. Thanks for joining us, Belinda.
Okay. Yeah, great to hear what everyone's up to, all the amazing things. So thank you. So I guess the COP31 stuff, I can just quickly refer to. I've been working with a couple of partners here, just putting together a strategy for keeping fossil fuel influence out of COP, specifically on sponsorships and advertising. So I'm hoping to get that funded and we can kick off on that as soon as any host is announced. But having said that, we've already started a bit of work talking to the government, making suggestions for how they can exclude fossil fuels and promote energy solution companies and Pacific Island voices around the venue if and when it happens. As for the fossil ad ban, look, we're still always very keen for any councils to declare a fossil ad ban. We've got 18 at the moment, and some of them have stopped fossil fuel sponsorships, council events. Some have stopped their property being used to sponsor fossil fuel advertising, including sports grounds and things like that. So that's still ongoing. If anyone's got interest from a council, particularly one that's changed hands or leadership in the last 12 months, please let me know, and I'm happy to write motions for them and give them any advice. And we're also working pretty hard on the ACT as well to try and get some fossil fuel exclusions there as well. Any questions? No, all good. I hope to be in touch with businesses in particular, startups that we hope to promote around COP. As I said, funding permitting.
Belinda, with the councils that have been ditching stuff, is there a central place where that's all publicised so that we can share that good news, at least some good news?
Yeah, some good news. There is. It's a fossiladban.org website. We put all the updates on the news section there. And we've also made public all of the motions and that have gone up. So it's easy to get the info for anyone who wants to do it. But also equally, I found the most effective ways for me to write the motion or write the sub-edit the motion and just, do as much work for the councillors as possible. Yeah, so we just one more thing. We had a couple of councils say no to a fossil ad ban because I thought it would impact their bottom line because they get a lot of money from renting out bus shelters and their billboards. But we did some research and we found that less than 1% of all outdoor advertising is fossil fuels. So it's a very small, if anything, hit to the bottom line. So I've got that information as well if anyone wants to push it along.
And in terms of ACT, the Parents for Climate are really pushing that. They're doing a great job.
Yeah, we're trying to get into their sponsorship policy changed, so it'll include fossil fuels. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Belinda. That's really exciting work underway. So thank you for all you're doing. And yeah, glad we can share and bring in more collaborators. So Tracy, you have internet. Did you want to chime in with anything?
No, it's okay. Thank you, Lisa. I was able to hear that you did give us a bit of a synopsis of what we've been discussing. I appreciate that. Unfortunately, being rural, I am on Starlink, so I'm blaming Elon for my internet problems at the moment.
Yes. Well, just another thing to add to the pile that we can blame him for. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Before you log off, though, I might invite my colleague Kira just to share a bit about a video production workshop we're delivering on the Future Generations Day with partners at University of Technology, Sydney. Just in case you want to share with your networks and bring people along. So the idea is we don't have any resources ourselves to do anything. So we're going to use an afternoon with some professional film directors. We're bringing in Emily from Climate Media Centre and some other partners to capture some inspirational young leaders and others, and have that not just for some pre-election comms, but also what we might be able to build out and make use of across platforms out to COP30. So, Kira, would you like to share a bit? Thanks.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good to see you and great to hear all your updates. I think you said it all, Lisa, but yeah, I think, as a cross-sectoral network, making sure that we're including those youth voices is very important. So when Liz Courtney, the film producer, said that she was interested in helping us create this event, we thought it was a really good opportunity to capture some of those voices and expand the youth network, so we can share these cross-sectoral pieces with them. So yeah, we have some great mentors that will facilitate groups of young people to create content. Laura Wells, she's a social media producer. Stephen Long, he's an ex-ABC journalist. And as Lisa said, the Climate Media Centre will be there to help us kind of encourage and produce some content. So yeah, if you or any youth that you know want to come along, we'd love to see you.
And thanks, Kira. And in particular, anyone you know that might be in Sydney or is going to another Climate Action Week event from one of those important places we know, like Sturt, Wills, etc., please do connect them in. We have a UNICEF Young Ambassador from Latrobe Valley who works for Energy Australia, who'll be one of our spokespeople, which is very exciting. So anyone you think has a really compelling message to share that we can then work to get back to local media and local social networks, that would be amazing. So please do, send those names and contacts our way, and we'll do what we can to make sure we capture something and amplify their voice and message and hopefully cut through where it's needed. Yeah.
I'm just catching up on my emails, but has a message gone out via CanaChat?
It has not. Yeah, that's a good point. We will do that. Thanks, Jill. Might need to do a generic Climate Action Week note with all the things. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. It's really, a very busy time. So please do take care of yourselves, whatever that looks like, and reach out if there's anything we can do or the broader networks to help. And look forward to following up with those resources that were mentioned today, scorecards, report cards, other events, initiatives. Yeah, awesome to have you all out there doing amazing things and adding power to the network. And we'll circulate the summary from today, as always, and keep this show on the road, and see you all at the next recurring working group meetings or events. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lisa.
So yeah.
Bye.